Hey guys, welcome back. Well, maybe not welcome back. Maybe welcome to this new rebranded channel. But I guess welcome back. Um, so, formerly known as the Sport Bible, is now going to be known as the Wizard of Odds. No, I did not come up with that name myself. It was a friend who came up with that. Shout out to Ben for coming up with that name. But I really liked it, so I've decided to go with that from now on. Um, but I really wanted to make some videos and stuff, but like if I'm honest, I'm someone who in the past has dealt with a lot of mental health issues and stuff like that, and it's kind of just not really, like, not super bad, but has just not been like 100% as of late, and so I kind of just haven't really felt like doing it. I mean, I've wanted to, but it's just like a confidence thing as well, I suppose. Like, I'm very socially awkward and that sort of stuff, and yeah, I don't know, it's kind of hard to talk about, but anyway, we're back here today. So I've recently started working from home, I guess, so it opens up a bit more of an opportunity for me to be able to do this sort of stuff, and it's something that I really want to, you know, like, I didn't even really kickstart it in the first place, so I'd like to just try and get it up and going properly, and get a bit of consistency with it all and that sort of thing. Um, so yeah, thanks for watching and listening. It'll be just like before. I've put a NBA game on in the background. I've put on Philly and New York, of course, facing off in the playoffs at the moment. My team, the Knicks, took game one against Philly at home, so pretty big win, and pretty good time to be a Knicks supporter. No, I'm not in over my head and believe that they can win the comp, but you never know, I guess. Boston's got to be the favourites, and Denver, like, after that comeback against the Lakers yesterday, they're just showing again that they're the demon that everybody's going to be looking to take down. But we'll see as time goes on. Some of the series look pretty dire already. I mean, Milwaukee, Dame had 35 in just the first half today. Didn't score in the whole second half, but essentially got the job done against a Pacers team who, Tyrese Halliburton, since his early season MVP candidate performances, has just looked, not even like an all-star. He's just like, he's gone into a shell almost since they got Siakam. And Siakam's actually, he had 36 or 37 today, I think, leading the way for them. Um, you know, he's obviously got previous playoff experience with the Raptors. Like, his big coming out party was in the finals of, was it 2016? No, 2018 with Kawhi. Nobody really knew who he was even then. He wasn't like a superstar, and yeah, that was kind of his coming out party, and he's been well known since then. But even without Giannis for the Bucks, they still just seem like they're going to be too tall of a task for that Indiana team. I mean, you look at the team on paper, and they've got like Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nembhard both in the starting lineup. It's just probably not going to cut it, really, for them. But anyway, didn't really want to get too much into the NBA in this one. Maybe at the end. I actually wanted to make this one just about the NRL. I just wanted to. I did originally plan to do some pre-season, like, previews for some teams, but I went away for just after Christmas time and got back midway through January. And yeah, as I said at the start, like just then, since then, I haven't really worked up the courage to do one, or necessarily felt like in the right mindset to do one of these. So, but I've been feeling a bit of inspiration the last few days, and yeah, as I said, I really want to try and start doing some stuff on here, and so like I might as well start it off with essentially a state of where teams are at now. What, six rounds into the season, I think we are, or seven rounds in. Because it's been quite interesting so far. So like end of round 7, we've got Cronulla on the top, and they're a team that I thought a lot about last night. After they went to the top, so they're 5-1 with a bye. So I understand why maybe the Sharks faithful would be, you know, pretty excited at this time. But like I did have them as a top 8 side. I think most people did, potentially pushing top 4. Depending on if they can win some tight games and stuff. But their biggest problem is they're essentially. I would essentially hold them in the same regard as the team that they did belt yesterday, the Cowboys, in the sense that they're flat track bullies, but just at a better level than the Cowboys. So like you look at the Sharks, you look at who they've beaten this year. So they beat the Warriors round 1. That was good credit, like tough win. Went to New Zealand. They were down, I think 12-0 possibly, and then just ground that game out. Warriors looked like they were just going to put them away, and the Sharks came back and won that one, to their credit. Then they beat the Bulldogs in round 2. Oh, just before I move off the Warriors game, we haven't exactly seen that much from the Warriors. So I mean, take what you want from that win. The Warriors have not looked anything like the team that they were last year, which is something I did see coming. They've shown flashes of it, especially in that game, but just, yeah, since then, I mean, a pretty disgusting loss to the Dragons on the weekend, and you can say, oh, the Dragons are playing well, but I'm sorry, I don't buy that for a second. Dragons are still a bottom 4 team. There should be no reason to be hyping them up like that. The Warriors should be pretty disappointed with themselves following that loss. That's just, for a team that was a top 4 team last year, and if they had those sort of aspirations again this year, that is a very embarrassing loss. Not much else other way to put it, really. But anyway, so round 2 for the Sharks, you beat the Bulldogs. I think they had a lot of outs that week, as they have had most weeks. But the Dogs are, are they a top 8 team, or are they a bottom 4 team? I guess it's hard to get a read on them. They could sneak into the 8, but I think they're probably around the middle to lower third of the ladder. They can, they're here to play this year. There's no doubt about that. They've had some good performances, but it's hard to see them really getting it done against I know they gave Melbourne a good run last week, but against a team that's, if you said Penrith in round 20 when they're fully in swing, fully in tilt to the set to getting ready for finals, I think they would just obliterate the Dogs. I don't think they're that sort of team, but I think they can probably compete. They're probably better than a lot of the lower teams around them, say the Titans and the Tigers and the Knights, for example, on the weekend. So, Sharks beating them not crazy. Then they get rolled by the Tigers at Leichhardt, and the Tigers have shown since then they're still a bottom four team, most likely. You know, like, so that loss, that's pretty big. That loss, to lose to a team like that, like back-to-back wooden spooners, you know, that's just not on. Then they had that little flash against Canberra where they're down 18-0 in the first half, come back, put 36 on straight to win that game by 14 in the end. They then have a bye. They then come back and beat the sorry Rabbitohs, who are just struggling again. What's the answer there? I don't know. And then they belt the Cowboys, who, as I said, I hold them in a similar regard. I just think they're both flat track bully teams, but the Sharks are on another level, and they to the Cowboys, and they showed that yesterday. So I think the Sharks are no doubt a top 8 team, and will get there. I mean, they've got Canberra next week, and they've got the Dragons after that. So, you know, they've probably got another couple of wins there, or like at least they should have. And then it's really testing time for them. They're pretty much going through the gauntlet. They've got the Storm at Amy Park. They then play the Roosters at Suncorp for Magic Round on a neutral venue. So, you know, it's not like it's a home game, and they should have an edge there. You're probably going Roosters. Then they play Penrith at home. Then, you know, they play Para, who, you know, who knows what's going to come of them, whether Moses will be back, or, you know, they've been inconsistent. And then they play the Broncos. So, you know, that's a pretty big, like, Parramatta excluded, you've almost got a top 4 a top 4 run. Well, you do have a top 4 run in the space of 5 weeks. So that's when you can expect to start seeing them drop off. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting with them. And it'll be interesting to see just how they go in those games. I honestly don't expect them to win any of those games. If they win one, it wouldn't be surprising. But if they can win 2 of those games against, like, realistic top 4 teams, then, you know, maybe I'd start to buy into them a bit more. But at this stage, it's just still a no. Then you've got Melbourne in second. So, I mean, they've been hard as well. Like, they've had some really good patches. They've looked really good in some games. Round 1 against Penrith, they looked awesome. You know, I tipped Penrith in that game. I think a lot of people did. Melbourne haven't lost in round 1 in 20 years or something, but everyone was thinking, oh, this is it. But they come out and get the win against Penrith, a full strength Penrith. Granted, round 1, and Penrith obviously were in the grand final, and so shorter pre-season to everyone else, and, you know, that sort of thing. Then they come out against the Warriors at home the week after, and they they had that game wrapped. Then they choked it. The Warriors came back, took the lead, and it was only in the last few minutes that Melbourne scored again to make it a 2-point game, and then Xavier Coates, like, scored the try of the year. Everyone's been overhyping that a little bit, saying it's the greatest try ever. That's a bit far-fetched, just a little bit far-fetched. You know, it's up there, but certainly not the greatest try ever. I think it's a massive overreaction for anyone who thinks that. But that's just my opinion. But so that they escape with that win, right? And then they come up against Newcastle, who up to that point were 0-2. And all the Jackson Hastings drama had happened and that sort of stuff. Granted, Melbourne had no Munster, no Hughes. There might have been a few others out for this game. They take the loss in Newcastle by 2 to the Knights. Then they have a bye. Then they get a 2-point win against Brisbane without who actually played that game. So they had Reynolds, but no Walsh, no Haas. Like you're expecting them to. If you're really that much of a quality side, you should be able to get the job done against Brisbane, who is a quality outfit as well, but without Payne Haas, who is their most important player, and Reece Walsh, who's take your pick, second or third behind with Reynolds. So those two guys out, and you still only claw home and get the job done by 2. Then you face the Bulldogs, and Addo Carr scores 3. So maybe that that game should have been a bit bigger of a margin. Maybe it was just like maybe it's something to look into. Their right side defence, their right side wing, which is Will Warbrick and Nick Meaney, I believe. So maybe that's just something for them to, they might just have to touch up on it, because that's the only place that the Dogs' offense came from, and that's the only reason it was so close. Besides that, Melbourne get the job done, and then they had a good win against the Roosters. Granted, again, they probably should have put them away a bit more than they did. The Roosters, only a 6-point game. The Roosters didn't look. They didn't really show much though. I mean, they scored. Their first try was Michael Jennings, which I believe was off a kick, and then Joey Manu's just brilliant. So it was 12-all going into the last 10 minutes in a game that probably shouldn't have been. Like I felt watching that Melbourne dominated that game. So Melbourne, they're showing that they can win a close game. They're showing that they can grind out the tough wins. But in these games against the Bulldogs, for example, and a severely depleted Brisbane team, you should be able to put those games to bed and not win them by 2. So, like Melbourne, they're probably a top 4 team because they're getting the job done against the good teams. So you've got to think that when they come up against the Titans and the Tigers and a Canberra, they've got to put some points on, and be able to handle those games well. So they probably make the top 4, but are they a real premiership threat? Yes, they beat Brisbane and Penrith, but I mean you can find big excuses for both the wins. So I would realistically say at this stage, no, Melbourne cannot win the comp, and neither can Cronulla for that matter. The Dolphins, currently in 3rd. They've just had a massive hiding of Parramatta up in Darwin, which was, I think everyone was quite surprised by. There was a lot of upsets this weekend. It seemed like it was a real weekend for the favourites, and whether it was maybe they either they lost or didn't quite cover, but it felt like it was a weekend that the favourites were going to get the job done in most of the games. I think Melbourne were the favourites; they got it done. And then the Warriors-Dragons game, we'll get into that. But yeah, the Dolphins played Para. I was going into this thinking, all right, Para's just come off the back of a good win. Dolphins have just been handled by Brisbane, like manhandled. They've got 7 of their starting 13 guys out, essentially. Oh, that really scared me, that random noise. Anyway, so yeah, they've got 7 of their starting 13 out, and against Para, who have looked shaky without Moses, but you thought, all right, they're finally starting to put it together after a good win last week. Not the case. They absolutely collapsed in the second half. Maybe put it down to the heat, but the Dolphins were able to go with no hammer. They were able to get the job done convincingly. But like that's another team. You look at who they've beaten, and I wouldn't even consider them flat track bullies. I think they've just they've got Bennett as coach, and they've got some experience in the team. They play fast. They play good footy. No, they will not be able to compete with a Penrith or a Melbourne or someone like that. Or Brisbane really. Like we saw, Brisbane take care of them only 2 weeks ago without any of their guys. I think maybe Walsh played, but you know, Hammer did get injured in that game. It looked pretty close until Hammer did get injured. To be fair, but I think if Reynolds and Haas are in that game, the Dolphins probably get rolled even worse than what they did. So I can see them. So they've beaten the Tigers, the Titans, the Dragons. Big loss against the Cowboys in round one, and then lost to Brisbane. Get the job done against Para. Take that for however much you want it to mean. But to me, it doesn't really mean a whole lot. I still see them missing the 8. They're probably like a 10 to 13 sort of place team, if not lower, by the end of the year. But we'll see how things go with them. 4th place Penrith at the moment. They've struggled without Cleary, to say the least. So I believe he played in the game against Brisbane. I can't remember if he played. So no, he didn't play against the Roosters, and they still got the job done. And that was a game where everyone was actually thinking the Roosters might get the win, but Penrith grounded out without Cleary, and that was pretty big for them. Then they've come out the next week and just played like you haven't seen them play for the last 3 years. They were very poor against Manly. And Manly haven't exactly been consistent to start the year either, so it was quite a surprise loss in that one, to go down by 14 and just not be able to execute as usual for them. So pretty disappointing loss there. They get the week off with the bye and then come out. So they were one of the favourites that did cover the line this weekend. They won by 16. I've seen a lot of, as a Tigers supporter and being in Tigers groups and stuff like that, I've seen a lot of people with issues the last couple of weeks about the referees. And as someone who, in the past, I remember famously that the Cowboys game a couple of years ago with Kyle Felt at the end, that was absolutely disgraceful. I remember a few years ago, I remember one with Isan Masters. Or maybe it wasn't like necessarily him, but it was when he was playing. It was against the Broncos, and just some rubbish penalties to end the game there. And then even so, the Tigers should have, like, if Moses is there, they lose that game purely based on because Moses kicks that goal at the end of the game, and that was a rubbish call as well. So it's quite funny that this stuff, like, it does seem to happen to the Tigers quite often. Or, like, you can if you've got a 1 or a 2 point lead with 5 seconds to go, as a Tigers fan, you don't feel safe. You know something controversial is going to happen. It's just feels like it's the way it has gone for the last 5 years or so, possibly even longer. But look, I can safely say I didn't really have any massive problems the last couple of weeks. I went to that Dolphins game actually, and like, I think the thing everyone was displeased about was Appy scooting out of half. And he should have got a penalty, but it's one call. The Dolphins go down the other end and score. Like, in a sense, it does ruin the game. But, I mean, you still got to be in the game for the rest of it, and you can't just let that one bad call ruin the rest of your day. And that's how a lot of people are saying it was with Tupou and a lot of other calls. And it's just like, if it's at the end of a game, I feel like you've got a reason for it. Like if you lose by 1 or you lose by 2, and rightly so, like if you still do lose by 1 or 2, and something happens earlier in the game, then sure, you've got a case. But if you lose by 20 and there was something that didn't go your way in the 50th minute, it's up to the team out there to use that wrong call or that anger as motivation to try to turn the game around. You can't lose by 30 and blame that one call. In some instances, I think there is an argument against it. I'll look back to that Warriors and Brisbane, was it the semi or a prelim last year at Suncorp, I think. The infamous now Reece Walsh, Russell Wilson touchdown pass. That has a case for, well, I think more than a case for that ruined the game. Because, yes, Brisbane were in front by 12 or 14 at the time, but the score hadn't changed from half time. It was still a run, you could still run that score down, especially the way the Warriors were last year. And that just took all the air out of the game. It was a grind up until that point. It was back and forth. Neither team wanted to let up. Like, they didn't want to give the other field possession or anything like that. And that, like the most blatant forward pass you'll ever see in your life, gets missed. It just took all the air out. It felt like it crushed the Warriors. And, like, as someone who was at the game, went home very displeased because the last half an hour or so was just unenjoyable because that took the air out of the game. If Brisbane do go on and roll them the way that they did after that, if without that incident happening, then okay, fair enough, but we'll never know if that would have happened. So in a case like that, I feel like there's an argument for that sort of thing to be looked at, but the calls that people are saying have gone against the Tigers the last couple of weeks, I think are a little bit out there, to be honest, as a Tigers fan myself. But back to the team on topic at the moment of Penrith. They get the job done. Good for them. And then they play the Cowboys, Souths, Dogs, Warriors. It's not like they have a ridiculously hard schedule coming up. I'm not sure as to the health of Cleary. I think he's close to being back, but I mean, if he's not 100%, I wouldn't be rushing him. I don't think they need to. I think it's more beneficial to just make sure he's good to go at the end of the year, to be honest. So I wouldn't rush him back if I was them. It's crazy with Penrith at the moment. They lose more and more players every year, and you think, okay, they got to have lost something from last year. They're probably the only team. They haven't looked great, but you still look at the way they play and you go, all right, by round 20, this team's going to be roaring again. They're going to be rearing their head and they're going to be ready to go. You can just feel it, like, barring a Nathan Cleary length of the season injury. It looks like they're the team to beat again, which is crazy that, like, this is 4 years now. And even 5, really. Like, they were the team to beat the year that they lost to Melbourne in the grand final. They were the team to beat that year, and they were pretty piss poor in that grand final, to be honest. The team in 5th, Manly, just been very inconsistent so far this year. Like round 1 in Vegas, they beat South. In, I wouldn't say ridiculously convincing manner, but they got it done, and you never really felt like South were going to get them in that game. Then they come out, play the Roosters in round 2, and win the Vegas Bowl, I think they were calling it, which was, a pretty solid win, maybe showing that they're in it for the tough games. Then they come out and lose to Para, and I think Moses played that game, so that's a full strength Para. So it's kind of, you know, you can give an excuse for it. But then the week after they come out and they lose to the Dragons. They looked unstoppable in the first 10 minutes, and then just were diabolical for the other 70. They looked like they forgot how to play rugby league football and just completely lost the plot. The Dragons. So again, that's I think people are overreacting on the Dragons a bit. Yeah, you've still got to be good enough to get the job done on the day, but they benefited a lot from Manly shooting themselves in the foot, really, to get that win. Then Manly comes out and beats Penrith, who, without Cleary, had just beaten the Roosters and, looked like they were going to be able to handle it without Cleary for a while. And, yeah, again, Penrith that day were diabolical, but Manly get the job done there after, being terrible themselves the week before. Then only last weekend, they had a draw with the Warriors, which they, I think, had a 12-point lead with not long left, and the Warriors came storming back to tie it, send it to Golden Point, and neither team being able to break the deadlock in a pretty rare draw. But again, Manly had that game wrapped up, so do we maybe look at that and go, okay, that was a pretty solid performance from them in New Zealand, and they just couldn't close it. The Warriors used the power of the crowd to get them home in the last 10 minutes and tie it up. And then if you take it that way, if they win that game, they've only lost 2, both away from home. One, they were completely diabolical, and one was against Parramatta with Mitch Moses. So maybe they are showing a bit more than what we're giving them credit for at the moment. And then this weekend, another game where I thought the favourite was going to cover the line quite comfortably. I really thought they were going to put it on the Titans, but the Titans managed to find their crazy attack really from last year, where they were able to put up points but not able to stop points from being scored against them. It was pretty reminiscent of a game from just any of their games from last year, really. You see 64 points. Manly do get the win against, some might say, a courageous Titans. But yeah, good for the Titans that they were able to find their attack again. But I still expected Manly to handle it a bit better. But now reviewing that, they had that one bad game against the Dragons, so you'll forgive them for that. They lose against Para by 4 with Mitch Moses, and a draw with the Warriors. They're actually going quite well. I feel they're probably. It's hard to say whether they can go with Penrith or Brisbane, but we will find out in a few weeks. So Penrith and Manly and Brisbane, Suncorp, 17th of May at Magic Round. That will be one to watch. I think just because Manly's kind of putting a little bit of respect on their name, I guess. They're just quietly humming along and getting it done. Tom Trbojevic is healthy, pretty rare sight, so they need to take advantage of that while they can. So I would say Manly are a team to watch right now, honestly. Looking at 6th, the Brisbane Broncos. They've been really, really hard to get a grasp on. But for all all purposes, it seems like they're probably closer to the team of last year than I thought they would be. I personally thought that the losses of Flegler and Farnworth and Capel were just going to be too much. I mean, you take your Robin to your Batman out in Flegler. Farnworth was a tackle buster, and he would just score tries off his own pure creation and tackle busting. So you lose a bit of that. And then Capel, he wasn't a game breaker, but he was a solid second rower. And you take all of that out of that team, it felt like it was going to be a bit too much, especially with having to put Cobbo in the centres. Another person who I think everyone's overreacting to. I don't think he's a centre whatsoever. He was much better on the wing, and I'm going to stick by that. I don't understand what everyone's seeing in him at centre. I just don't think it fits. Mariner been good, but I think they need to put Cobbo on that other wing, and they need to find a centre, like a real centre, because he's just doesn't have it in him, I don't believe. But yeah, they've been actually really good. Like they were disappointing in Vegas against the Roosters, but then came out and beat the Bunnies in round 2 in pretty convincing fashion too. I think it was only a very late Latrell try that made the scoreline a bit more respectable there. And then they get rolled by Penrith, but then come out and destroy the Cowboys. They then lost by 2 to Melbourne without all their guys, then beat the Dolphins and Canberra. Those last two are probably not much to take out of, but they're racking up the wins. You get to the end of the season, you get Haas back, you get Walsh healthy, and you get Reynolds back. They're gonna be a tough side to beat again, but I don't think they're quite. I think they've lost too much to be able to beat Penrith, so I'd still have Penrith over them. Next is Canberra. They've been definitely a surprise to start the year. I personally had them coming last, and I had no hesitation in thinking that whatsoever. But they beat the Tigers in round 1, which was like a whoop-de-doo. You beat the Tigers, whatever. Or round 2, that was, sorry. They beat the Knights in round 1, which is, again, I don't have the Knights that high. I don't take much out of that. They then beat the Tigers, don't take much out of that. But there's 2 wins already in 2 rounds. So that tip for the wooden spoon is kind of almost out the window, you might say, like after 2 weeks. They then lose to the Warriors in New Zealand. So, if you're holding Canberra in a high regard, you forgive that game. Then you come out in round 4 against the Sharks and you're up 18-0, just like that. But then you choke that game. Then you roll Para pretty convincingly, which, without Moses, I mean, you probably tip Canberra in that game, but to win by, 33 points is quite a margin against Para, who is a top 8 hopeful team. And Canberra realistically aren't. So, I would just say again, that's embarrassing for Para. To lose by that much without your star is not acceptable against the Canberra team. And then you look at the 21-20 to the Titans, and you might think, the Titans really showed something in that game. They scored 2 tries in the last 5 or 10 minutes to come back and send it to Golden Point. So it wasn't really that close for the most of the game, but it's still, Canberra went to Golden Point against the Titans. They're both bottom of the rung teams, so you probably expect a closer game. in this scenario. And then this weekend just gone, we see probably more of what I expect Canberra are truly and are going to be, and they get rolled by 24 to the Broncos again without their guys, besides Walsh. So, good for the Broncos, bad for Canberra. Just to simplify it, uh, in the simplest of ways. We get to 8th with the Cowboys. So I've already talked on them a bit. I think they're a flat track bully team. Depending on their draw. So like having a look at it. So they've got Penrith next week. I don't see them winning that. But then they come up against the Dolphins, Titans, Rabbitohs, Tigers. There's a chance that if their attack is singing, they could take all 4 of those games, and it wouldn't even faze me. And if they do that, then they're suddenly probably sitting in first at the end of round 11, heading into Magic Round, I think. No, sorry, no, that would be a little bit after Magic Round. But yeah, I could easily see that happening. And then if you're at 8 wins after 11 rounds, you really don't have you don't have to do that much more to get into the 8 to come end of season. So I wouldn't say they're out of contention. They're just going to have to get the job done. But again, like the Sharks, I don't see them beating any top sides in any meaningful games. They're too inconsistent. They show flashes where they look like the team from 2 years ago, and Scott Drinkwater looks unstoppable. And then, but when it's up against them and they're not winning the battle in the middle, they roll over. And Taumalolo, he looks like, I think, like a shell of himself would be a kind thing to say. He looks worse than that. He is nothing compared to what he used to be. I don't know what has happened to him. I've heard something about bone issues possibly, but he just looks like a shell. I think they've had like a few injuries, but nothing major. I mean, you lose Labert, but I wasn't that high on him. I just think it's like a lot of underperforming from a lot of their young players, just not quite getting going, that sort of thing. They'll be an interesting team to watch just to see if they can show any sort of fight and prove that they're not just a bottom feeder team and they can win the good games. So them and Cronulla, you're kind of looking out for the same thing. If they can get a big scalp, you feel a lot better about either one of them having a say in the competition when it gets to the business end. St. George, I've already spoken about them quite a bit. Everyone's overreacting. I don't know what else to say there, really. Everyone's going crazy about Lomax and the Dragons are playing the best they have since Wayne Bennett. Everyone just needs to calm down. If they finish higher than 12th, then I'm trying to think of something to offer for that, but I would be incredibly shocked, and I'll happily eat my words, but I can't see them really being out of the bottom 4, let alone finishing 12th. I think that this is something that's become synonymous with them. Maybe not so much recently, but I know of years past, like they were the nickname for the Dragons is the May Premiers. They just start off really well, and as soon as it hits the May, they can't win a game. Which it looks like they've maybe got that back. They're not quite the May Premiers, but a a few wins from them. I wouldn't call it good form, but they've managed some wins. But I think we should just wait, and I think we'll soon see the Dragons. I mean, they've got the Roosters, Sharks, Rabbitohs. If the Rabbitohs start performing, that could go either way. They get a bye for for Magic Round. But yeah, I think they'll show their true selves pretty soon. The Warriors probably the toughest team to get a good read on so far this year. But I think I did mention like I had them missing the 8 this year, purely because you look at the Cowboys from 2 years ago. Everyone had them as like a potential spoon team, and they've ended up dominating and coming second. And like that was arguably, Parra didn't feel like the team that was going to beat Penrith that year. It felt like if anyone's going to beat these guys, it could be the Cowboys. Just the way that they were rolling, their attack was incredible. Like everything was clicking every week, and they just couldn't quite get there in the end. I think they lost to Parra actually, potentially to get into the grand final. So, you know, make of that what you will. But then, they come out last year and they finished 9th or 10th, maybe. Nothing like the team that they were the year before. So I kind of looked at the Warriors last year and I thought I saw a lot of similarities in them to that Cowboys team from the year before. And I just thought, they've been really good this year. The attack's been flowing. Just effortlessly. But I think they'll come back down to earth. I think it'll wear off. And at the moment, it's kind of looking like that might be the case. But there's still signs of the team from last year. So that game against Melbourne, yes, they lost. But I mean, they had patches where they looked really good. Same in the Sharks. That first half an hour of the round 1 game, they looked like they hadn't missed a beat. But funnily enough, it's exactly the same as the Cowboys last year. I remember the Cowboys round 1 last year. They've come out and put on 3 tries in the first 15 minutes or something, and I think they ended up losing their game last year. And you're thinking, oh, they look like just incredible. They haven't fallen anywhere. And, it looked the same with the Warriors. First 20 minutes, half an hour of that game, it's like, oh my goodness, they're just running with such intent. And then it kind of, the Sharks just withstood everything that the Warriors threw at them and ended up like grinding out a win. Then they lose to Melbourne. They looked okay. They beat Canberra, who I don't have that high, not massively convincingly. They beat the Knights, similar situation. Pumped the Rabbitohs, so that's a good booster. Then nearly get done in by Manly, but come back right at the end to tie it and get a draw. But then, this game weekend just gone against the Dragons. I mean, that's got to be the biggest tell of all so far. That's really not on. If you're going to be a top 8 side, and it's one that I want to say is a forgive run. But I mean, they had so many chances early on again to just put the game to bed, and they didn't. And once the Dragons got a sniff, they were like a great white shark. They just exploded and couldn't be stopped after that. Testing. Sorry guys, my microphone actually just died. I've managed to fix it. Oh, plug it in, sorry. Anyway, I'm just going to try and zoom through these last few because it's getting pretty long now. But so yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the Warriors go after this. They've got the Titans, then the Knights. So you kind of think if they want to be forgiven for this for the Dragons game, they probably need to win both of those quite convincingly, just to put it out of everyone's minds that they got rolled by the Dragons. And then we'll see where they go from there. So, I'm not putting a line through them, but I need to see more. You got the Roosters in 11th. Pretty much haven't really changed that much from the last few years. They look like they should be a really hard team to beat. And yes, they performed some games. They rolled South by 42, beat the Broncos in Vegas. But they lost to Manly, lost to Penrith without Cleary, lost to the Bulldogs. Granted, like they nearly came back in that game. In a game where I think they had a sin bin and a send off. Possibly at the same time for a little bit, and trailed big at half time. I think it was 26-0 at half time by the looks of it, yeah. And thanks to one Matt Burton try in the second half of the Dogs, that won them the game. It ended up 30-26. The Roosters came storming back in that game. So, I think it says a bit about both teams, really, the fact that the Roosters were able to roll back so much in that game, and also the Dogs letting them and not just slamming the door in a 13-12 game when you're up by 26 and you should have all the momentum. So I guess, there's things you can say for both teams in that game, but the Roosters shouldn't have been down 26-0 to begin with. So, they're still to blame heavily for that loss. They then beat the Knights by 2, which, is, in my mind, isn't that impressive. And then they lose to Melbourne by 6. And, they only lost by 6, but I wasn't overly impressed with their performance. So they look like they have the last 2 years. They look like they can go with you for the first, they're going to start the season slow. They'll be there when the finals come, and they'll look like they can compete. They'll trick everyone into thinking they're premiership threats again, but they're just not going to be able to get it done come end of season. The Dogs currently sitting in 12th. Not much to say about them. They've been better than in previous years. They could sneak into the 8 if they win a few lucky games, like win a few tight ones. Good win for them on the weekend. If they even finish 9th or 10th, I'd be pretty happy if I'm a Dogs supporter. They've had a pretty injury-rattled season already, and they've still got a lot of kinks to work out, I feel. But it's just weird. I know there's this thing about them signing all these utilities and that sort of thing, and they've signed some massive name players. Kikia's been really, really good for them, even though the output of it's like for Feeder, he's only going to make 5 runs a game, but they're big 5 runs, but you still want to see more coming from a second rower like that can bust 3 tackles on a run and stuff like that. You want to see them running the ball at least 10 times a game. So they've been using him better, but still not right. And they've got a lot of things to work out. I don't think their middle forward pack has anything of real value. They don't have it like a real game breaker of a prop. You know, imagine like a Fanua Blake going there instead of the Sharks. He would have added so much to a pack like that. Just somebody of that in that frame, I suppose, would have been awesome for them. But yeah, if you finish 9th or 10th from here, I'm pretty happy if you're a dog supporter. Tigers, it's been a bit of a rocky start, you know, by round 1, rolled by Canberra, then you come out and roll Cronulla, you get the win against Para on Easter Monday. It's always been a bit of a funny game, that one, but now have lost 3 in a row to the Dolphins and the Dragons, and now Penrith. You know, the Penrith one's perfectly explainable, but you know, losing against the Dolphins and the Dragons, they're both teams that I don't really see. I have the Tigers practically on par with the Dragons, depending on who's in and who's out. I thought with Galvin, with Galvin out, the Dragons probably had the edge, which is what happened. If Galvin plays, I think they beat the Dragons, and same for the Dolphins. I watched Jaden Sullivan that game. He's been horrible, and I saw him poke his head a few through times, and I just thought, oh, if that was Galvin, he would have been absolutely killing these guys. I really think if Galvin plays, we'd probably win both of those games. Not the Penrith game, obviously. He did play. So like the Tigers still aren't, you know, I still can't see them cracking even the top 10, but they've been better than last year. Big game against the Broncos this weekend. That'll be interesting. We've only got 2.5 minutes left of recording time before this cuts out, so I'm going to try to be really quick here. Para, you know, disappointing. I think I've talked a lot about them already. They beat the Dogs round 1, lose to Penrith in round 2, but were competitive. Beat Manly round 3, lose to the Tigers, rolled by Para, beat the Cowboys by 7, and then rolled by the Dolphins. They're just not the same team without Moses. You know, I feel like they can't really figure out what they would want to do with their pack either. You know, Offa Hengawi's starting most weeks. He's a great player, but I just think Paulo, you probably need to start him just for that impact and just to take a bit of the brunt out of the game. And then, you know, see what you've got from there. They could sneak into the 8, but depending on how long Moses is out and if they keep performing like they are, then it's, you know, the likeliness goes down every week. Newcastle, only 2-5 to start the year. Very bad loss against the Bulldogs on the weekend. They're pretty much returning to the team that they were before going on their run last year. Yeah, I kind of expected this from them. I didn't expect them to be the same team as last year, and I think their chances are pretty dire in terms of making the 8 this year. The Rabbitohs, honestly, I could talk for 60 minutes just about them. I can't believe what's happened to them after midway through last year. They looked like the grand final was theirs, and they were the team to beat. I remember them playing a Thursday or a Friday night against Penrith where they scored 2 tries in the last 5 minutes to win the game. And my mind was set after that, they're going to win the comp. Now that they've got that edge over Penrith, I thought that would really swing the season for them. And things have changed so drastically since then. And it's just crazy, honestly. And then the Titans, you know, been poor so far, but getting better. I don't think anyone thought they were going to be this bad. But so it's been a bit of a surprise, but hopefully they improve in the next few weeks. So yeah, the recording's about to time out. Thanks for listening to anyone that listened. Welcome back, and yeah, hopefully I'll speak to you again soon. Cheers.